So I mentioned today, Jean-François Roberge of the CAC decided time is right. And by the way, I wasn't even aware of the story otherwise because it turns out that Bill 21 in this
Yes.
case, right, the anti-secularism law, has to be renewed every 5 years. I completely did not think of that. I just thought it's law and that's the way it goes.
I
So
wasn't
today,
aware of
yeah, they
that.
officially made
Hmm.
it the case. They announced they do have an intention to renew the notwithstanding clause to shield Bill 21. That, for those of you who don't remember, is the secularism law that prevents people in positions of authority here from wearing religious symbols, hijabs, kippas, and of course, which we, when it's been discussed, talk for the most part about teachers and the fact that for a province that's in such great need of teachers, suddenly this law prevents those teachers from actually getting jobs here. So Anthony Housefather, who has spoken out in the past on Bill 96 and Bill 21, got a hold of me and said we should talk about this. And I thought, yeah, we absolutely should. So, Anthony, thank you for making yourself available.
Thank you so much, Aaron and Tasha.
Can't really be saying or can't say that I'm all that surprised by this happening. I just assumed it was, going to happen anyway. So what's your reaction to finding this out about today?
I mean, it's not a surprise. It's deplorable. I mean, when you're using the notwithstanding clause, both at the Quebec Charter and the federal charter, you're essentially saying, I am taking away a right in a way that's not reasonable in a free and democratic society, and I'm depriving, the way they're doing it preemptively, they're depriving people the opportunity to go to court to claim their right was taken away unreasonably and get a recourse. Because the normal thing would be they pass this bad bill, somebody would take it to court, you'd go to court, and the court would say, yeah, you're violating your right unreasonably, we're striking down the law. But when you use the notwithstanding clause, and it has to be renewed every 5 years, the judge can't say the law goes away for you. In the case of Bill 21, remember the English school boards, the Superior Court, the first court gave a decision that said English schools were exempt, but nothing else. And now we're waiting for the judgment of the Court of Appeal. And I think what's so important for everybody to know is that I've been pushing other MPs like my colleague Anna Gainey, Emmanuel Lambropoulos, et cetera, all across the board, have been pushing very hard for the federal government to take a strong stand on this because the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause, everybody knows it's in the charter. We have to live with it for the moment it's there. It should not be used preemptively. And we've been waiting for this Bill 21 decision of the Court of Appeal to make that case to the Supreme Court. We need to do something as soon as possible because we should not be living in a situation where the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause becomes normalized by Quebec.
But this doesn't change anything with respect to court cases or the appeal or anything else, right?
No,
Okay.
it would still allow. We're still waiting. It's been a long time since the Court of Appeal heard this case, and it's a weird long time before this judgment is being rendered. As soon as that judgment is rendered one way or another, either side will appeal it to the Supreme Court, and that's where the federal government should get involved immediately. We will get involved unless it takes so long that, well, then we should do a reference case. A reference case would be that you just ask the Supreme Court a question. You would say, is the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause permissible or not permissible? The problem with doing it as a reference case, it goes quicker, but you don't have any sympathetic people that are affected by the question you're putting, right? In the Bill 21 case, the judge can look at all these people who lost their jobs, who didn't have the ability to be promoted, who had to leave Quebec because they wore a hijab and wanted to be a teacher in a public school. If you ask a question to the court, well, then it's just an esoteric question to the court, and we're asking the court to reverse a precedent from the 1980s.
Exactly.
When in the Ford case, they basically said, yeah, it's okay to do it preemptively, which I don't think they would say today, but we need to get this before the Supreme Court as soon as possible.
Yeah, and that's exactly when we asked David Lametti that question, why not make this a reference case? It's something that's been brought up before. He gave exactly that. He said you'd be asking the court to basically reverse its own decision, and that's probably not the best way to go about this.
Not without having sympathetic defendants, no, which is why everybody is waiting with bated breath for the Court of Appeal decision on Bill 21. But the fact is that Bill 21 is a horrible law, the same way Bill 96 is, and we need to fight back. And I understand people's frustration with how long this takes, but I just want people to know we have a meeting of the English-speaking MPs from the Quebec caucus next week. We're going to be talking about this, and we're going to be pushing our government as soon as there is that opportunity to take very swift action to put our position out there that this is inappropriate, that the notwithstanding clause should not be allowed to be used in this way. And I really hope the Supreme Court will reevaluate that and say, no, it cannot be used this way.
Anthony, I have two questions that both involve sort of foregone conclusions. Was there any hope that the CAQ would not renew the notwithstanding clause?
I mean, I think we can all hope in vain for
Yeah.
a lot of things, but I never really thought that would be a
Okay.
possibility. Did you?
I mean, I hope. I always hope against hope. That's the kind of optimist I am. But then, secondly, with a foregone conclusion, it has to be voted in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we knew the PQ supported the bill before Quebec Solidaire didn't, Liberals didn't. So where do we stand now? Is it a foregone conclusion if Quebec Solidaire supports it that it will be voted through?
Well, this is one question, right? This is another opportunity for Quebecers that don't agree with the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause, to voice their opinion again. Every member, like as we keep saying, parties are parties. Members of the National Assembly are members of the National Assembly, and every one of them has a right to vote. Mm-hmm. They don't have to blindly follow their party to vote for what their party is saying. And to me, this is a real opportunity to go back for our community across Quebec, to go back to the legislators that represent all of the different ridings, and there's English-speaking Quebecers across this province, to tell them that we do not want you to vote to reinvoke the notwithstanding clause preemptively for a second time. And that is perfectly possible, and I hope that there will be a grassroots effort out there to go after these M&As and have a real debate about it.
Well, you also know that whenever we talk about something like this, you mentioned some of the other English MPs from here wanting to get together and make their opinions heard. And then you sit back and look at the federal government as a whole and realize nothing is going to get said because they don't want to, for whatever reason, make this a case, an issue. That hasn't changed.
Well, on this issue, though, the Prime Minister has been clear. Other ministers have been clear that the Liberal Party is against the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause, and we will challenge it in court at the Supreme Court when the Bill 21 case gets there. So that, I think, is everyone would say that. I may be more loud about it, but everyone is saying that.
Have we heard the Prime Minister say anything about that today?
I don't think it's funny. The media, normally the Quebec media, in particular, the French media, will be grabbing me when I walk into question period or come at a caucus about an issue like this. And I got no questions on it today, so I doubt that he did.
Oh, interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
What does that tell you?
Well, just like you said, I think people didn't notice it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's officially being announced. The minister is going to go ahead tomorrow, Thursday. He took no questions on this today when it came up, but he will be announcing this tomorrow officially. So maybe that's when we start to see questions asked and maybe a reaction.
I will be surprised. First of all, I will be very much pushing for us to be very loud about it, and I will certainly encourage the PM to be loud about it. I think Quebec Anglos particularly, but all Quebecers need to hear him say that we don't approve of the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause.
Always a pleasure having you on, Anthony, and speaking your mind. And you can be sure that all your constituents, and I think a lot of other people as well, really appreciate that from you, too. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Have a great day.
You too. Anthony, HOUSEFATHER. There you go. As I said, this announcement officially did come down today, but it'll officially be made tomorrow. We'll see what kind of reaction we get from the federal government, not just from Anthony HOUSEFATHER.
Thank goodness for Anthony.